Yeah, without further ado, I'd love to welcome. I think probably Sharon gets to go first because she's had to stay up. I don't know quite what time it is with you. I know it's not like 4 o'clock in the morning. It's not quite so bad. But if you
No,
want to
it's
introduce
it's
yourself,
quite
and
decent. It's ten
yeah,
past eight, so yes,
yes,
pretty good. So, shall I give a little bit about myself first,
yes,
Lucy?
yes. If you could, yeah,
Yeah, so run a couple of social enterprises, Wicked Lab and Community Capacity Builders. Wicked Lab's got software to support ecosystems of initiatives with systems change based on complexity science. And Community Capacity Builders, mainly in the training space with systems social entrepreneurship, but more recently setting up a centre for autistic social entrepreneurs. So in Australia, there's starting to be some interest. I think it was around 3 years ago, the Victorian government had an autism plan where they had self-determination of autistic people through entrepreneurship. And then last year in March, we had a federal Senate Select Committee inquiry report that mentioned the opportunity for autistic people to establish social enterprises or to be leaders in social enterprises as a way of addressing unemployment, because the unemployment figures for autism in Australia, and I think it's even worse in the UK, it's 3 times that of disability, of general disability. So that's a bit of background. I've also got, feet in academia parts as well. I'm currently studying my 7th university qualification, which is quite sad, but I'm doing a Master of Autism. Yeah, I've got a couple of university positions, just taken on an adjunct position at Torrens, and I've got a visiting fellow position at Northumbria University in the UK. So looking forward to coming over, I think in around 3 months, which is going to be fantastic. So I think the questions I think what that were posed was my experience as an autistic social entrepreneur. There's good and there's bad. So the good, I guess the biggest skill for me from being autistic is what they call monotropism. So it's I mean, like you see on the TV with regards to autistic people liking having this love of trains, or some kind of fascination where they're completely involved in this fascination. Well, that can be across so many things, and for me it's complexity science and social entrepreneurship. So I want to know everything I can about a couple of topics, and you'll find with autistic people have these really strong interests where they just want to know everything about something. And so I'm really lucky that my interests are easy to earn money from. There's other autistic people where, they've got to be quite creative with regards to how they could take an interest and package that up to earn money. I see it as a strength, because, when I went and got my autism diagnosis, it was after I actually got recognised on the map of the complexity sciences as a leading theorist in complexity science for applied complexity, and I'm self-taught. So I was like, that's a bit strange. But I was looking at the other names of the other theorists. There's this real opportunity for entrepreneurship around the interests of autistic people, because they are so passionate about it. It consumes their life, their interests. And so that's the positive for me. The negative comes with the characteristics of being autistic. So it's around social communication. It's around interactions with people. I think from my generation, we learned to mask our autistic characteristics. And so people say to me, oh, but you don't look autistic, or you don't. But the fact is I can't do too much of this, you know. So I will only do a few people things in a week. There's this thing called spoon theory, and it kind of like goes like, you've got so many spoons. You wake up in the morning, you've got so many spoons, and every time you have interactions, you're giving away a spoon. And once you run out of spoons, there's like it's like a burnout. So I've got to manage those feelings all the time with regards to my interactions. And because it's really hard, and autism isn't something that's really acceptable, it's getting better, but I'm constantly masking. So people will say, you know, I'll go to a conference and they'll say, oh, let's go out and do this and all the rest of it. Oh, I've got some work to do because I need time out. So I'm always making excuses to leave. So I'd say the networking stuff can be hard. Noise is hard for me. So I spend most of my time with
Abby, can you give us a
noise
ring?
cancelling.
I'm at work at the moment, but I can drive back and leave a key somewhere. I don't know whether you're coming later on tonight.
I spend a lot of my time with noise cancelling at home. Nearly all the time I have noise cancelling earbuds in, because something like a bird outside the window would do my head in. And it's so funny because I've got a bit of, as I'm getting older, my hearing's not as good as it used to be. And I've had some hearing tests lately, and they've said, oh, you should have some hearing aids. And I said, well, do you have noise cancelling feature in the hearing aids? They don't. And so I said, well, like, losing hearing isn't a big deal for me, because the fact is, like, a lot of the noises can be quite, new clothes is a hassle, like the sensation on skin. I've got very poor executive functioning. So being able to follow step-by-step instructions is really hard for me. And it's funny with Lucy saying about needing, the camera going on the blink. I've got two great computers, but I had to buy a third one this week because I've got to do a whole lot of recording of videos for a training program. And I'm so used to using PowerPoint, and I've got two Macs sitting here. And when I had a look at the new features in PowerPoint, the recording of the videos is so much easier with Windows. And like people were saying, well, you just learn to use the app version of PowerPoint. And that's not as easy for me because it's a whole lot of step-by-step process stuff. So I've now gone out and bought the third computer this week. So I've got a Windows computer so I can do the recording. So there's a whole lot of work around all the time with regards to these kinds of issues. So I would say they're probably the main ones. The whole small talk stuff, because autistic people are so into what they do. If I lose interest, sort of stuff, which can seem really, really rude. But I've just stopped listening to people, know what I mean? Because I'm not interested, which is, which some people would consider that quite rude. So you're always covering that up. Like I've gone off and started thinking about what I'm interested in, sort of stuff. So you're always kind of like covering that sort of thing out. I've got to say that all autistic people are different. So you're hearing my version of autism today. And so there's characteristics of autism, and they talk about spiky profiles. So I'm, a lot of people who are autistic stim. I don't have a stimming kind of characteristic. That isn't something for me. Really poor executive function is my issue with. So like I don't use a stove. Because I've gassed myself twice and set the house on fire. So my cooking days with stoves are well and truly over. So I use gadgets to cook in. I like sameness. So I went through eating the same dinner for around 3 years, you know what I mean? So sameness is really good for me. Like I love, like we call it same foods as an autistic trait. So yeah, so you imagine going to a conference or something like that, and they dishing up the food, and it's it's not the same dinner I have at home. So there's just those general things all the time. But I love being autistic. I wouldn't want to be any other way. Starting to get involved in the autistic pride movement here. That's another thing to think about, is that there's an autistic community and there's an autism community. So there's an autistic community that are yay, like there's, like everything, there's diversity and we just think different. And then you've got an autism community, which is more the parents and the professionals who assist autistic people, and they're more about, I guess their thought is, how do we reduce some of these autistic behaviours. So there's kind of like a bit of a clash with regards to these two ways. Because if you imagine a parent who's got a small child, and they're wanting their child to not have these sensory issues and these communication issues, so they're coming from it very differently than an adult is coming from it who is autistic and is quite, this is how life is, and they don't mind it at all, sort of stuff. So there is a bit of a clash there. With regards to what the social enterprise sector, how the social enterprise sector can support autism, it's understanding what autism is. It's understanding the strengths of autism. It's understanding the challenges and putting in accommodations so that it's easier for autistic people to participate in social enterprise ecosystems and to have the same support that neurotypical people have. I would say, there's kind of like two ecosystems that come together to support autistic social entrepreneurs. You've got your social enterprise ecosystem, and you've also got the ecosystem of support services for autistic people. And it's those two systems working together. There's also a lot of theories with regards to, autistic people communicate differently, but it takes two people to communicate. So we spend all our life, well, a lot of us do, especially older autistic people, spend a lot of time masking that we're autistic so that we fit in a neurotypical world. I think there's an opportunity for the neurotypical world to meet us halfway with regards to the communication, because it takes two lots to communicate, to understand what makes communication easier for us, like getting information in advance so that we know what the topic is, very clear language, understanding that we can be blunt and frank because we don't do the small talk stuff. So I think it's an education process, and then accommodations for some of what, how we don't quite fit into the world, and having accommodations for that. So I think that's about me. I think I'm done.
See, I'm highly ADHD, and for the last 5 minutes, one of the things that we do is we blurt out and we interrupt, and I'm old enough to know that people generally don't like that, which means that my hyperactivity and my stimming has gone out of control in the last 5 minutes, because everything is moving, because I want to talk, because I want to say, yes, Sharon, I agree with loads of that. And so I was letting a little bit of that out more than I normally do, in case any of you heard just how
this is what happens when you have neurodiverse people or neurodivergent people in an event together. Yeah. The mask comes off, which is it's like you can't.
Fabulous webinar yesterday with this brilliant chap who's also a professor called Brian Irvin, and we'd already said to the chair, because we're both ADHD, you are going to need to keep control of us, because we're just going to go everywhere. We really, really are. So anyway, I'm Cathy. It's a real pleasure to meet you all, and it was a pleasure to listen to Sharon. So I currently am a chief executive. I'm the chief exec at the Initiative for Social Entrepreneurs, which is a social enterprise based in Birmingham in the West Midlands in the UK. And we're a business support agency. So we help social entrepreneurs set up their social enterprises. We help them grow. We help them scale. We do all sorts of things in that sort of general space. And for the last 10 years, after I left BT, British Telecom, I've been largely working in the social sector. So I set up a movement for employee engagement, which was a social movement. And then I worked in the Employee Ownership Association as Director of Operations there. So some pretty senior management roles in that time. I was diagnosed with ADHD, severe combined ADHD, 18 months ago, about a week after I'd taken on this chief exec role. So a real sort of like, okay, that makes sense all of a sudden. And it genuinely did. I'm an intelligent woman. I already knew that I struggled in a number of ways at work that it really didn't look like other people struggled in, but I had no idea whatsoever that that was actually what was underlying all of it. And when you look at me as a 55-year-old woman, I've actually got a really classic female ADHD pattern. I'm bright but easily distractible, which started to show in my exam results, 15, 16, O-levels for those of you who are old enough, GCSEs for those of you on the younger side. Just about scraped through A-levels, went to university, crashed and burned horrendously, simply couldn't cope with the lack of structure, the really boring degree that I'd chosen, a whole load of things. Went to work on a radio station for 4 years, completely different, really loved that, very creative, very, very chaotic. Ended up in BT for 21 years, but within that had 4 completely different careers because I get massively interested and passionate about stuff. And one of the things with ADHD people is we'll dive into something like that really highly impulsively. We'll what's called hyperfocus. Yeah, brilliant. This is the new thing, really exciting. And then bored now, done with that. And it's a pattern that can be quite difficult to sustain in a workplace, and you eventually find that you've kind of come to an accommodation with what you know that you're like, and within about 2.5 years of being in a role, you're looking for ways to make it interesting again, or to be able to sustain your interest in it, because I am only motivated by interest and urgency. Nothing else, nothing sensible. I mean, you guys mostly would probably go off and pay a parking fine. That's just really dull. I'm not going to do that. Literally, my brain will forget it. I won't be actively going, I'll do that in a bit. My brain, it would just be a blank spot because I'm not interested in it, and there will just be inertia around actually wanting to do it. We're not terribly, I mean, the whole executive function thing, exactly the same for most people with ADHD. A lot of us will be time blind. I'm actually pathologically early for everything, which is a really small proportion of people with ADHD. Most people will be massively late for everything because we haven't got a sense of the passing of time in a normal way. And if, for instance, you ask me in any context, but particularly a workplace, to do a timeline, that's something that my brain simply doesn't comprehend because I don't actually see time in a linear fashion. I see it as a web and a matrix, and things lead to other things. And so there are really quite simple workplace processes and things and stuff that we've all grown up with and we understand to be normal that my brain simply doesn't deal with. And as Sharon says, the energy that it takes you to actually then accommodate and live in that world with the masking that we do is absolutely exhausting. And it means that you don't have an awful lot of resilience for anything else. And so then, of course, if something inevitably happens in your life or wherever else, you've got such a small amount of capacity to then deal with work as well, that it can really cause problems. And I can pinpoint points in my life where that has happened, and because I haven't understood at that point what was behind it, it actually makes it really difficult to make or ask for the accommodations that you need. I will talk for hours, so I'm actually going to come back to Lucy and say, is there anything specific that you would like me and Sharon to rant about or ask questions, because I will genuinely answer anything. Nothing's off limits. You can ask me whatever you like about it.
Yeah, I wondered if from both of your perspectives, as leaders in social enterprise, because this is obviously a leadership group, whether there are particular challenges for you as leaders and how you've had to maybe adapt or address leadership, because obviously you've probably got a different style and people have to understand. I mean, I had an autistic chair, which once you knew, that was a really useful thing to know, because he wanted to know the numbers. He was one of those autistic people that like bus timetables, Sharon, and was a transport nerd. But, once you knew, then you knew how to respond. And I just wondered how both of you handle that situation with regards to sort of like declaring it and asking people how they can help you, really.
I'm much more upfront about it. I mean, obviously I didn't know before, but I'm fairly blatant now. So I will actually say to people, I cannot do a meeting of an hour long. This kind of environment's all right because it's not sort of a structured, we've got an agenda, whatever. But 45 minutes is pretty much my limit in terms of attention. And so I'm really clear that I won't do it. And if it means that we do 2 meetings, we do 2 meetings. I pretty instantly, on realising, told my board that we needed to find another way for somebody to minute, for instance, and to take notes and to follow up actions, because boy, is that not a strength of mine. And I'm fortunate in that I went through the access to work process, which is probably for Sharon's benefit at least, is a scheme run by our government that covers disability of this nature. And so I actually get support from the government in the form of 14 hours a week of human support, a VA called Taya, who's just, I mean, that's changed my working life because it's all the bits of executive function that I can't do. So I'm no longer apologising for the fact that I've got to move something because I've arranged a clashing meeting, or I've just simply forgotten about it, or I haven't replied to that email because it's now at the bottom of my email inbox and I just haven't done it because I didn't like the look of it and wasn't interested. So she manages all of that for me. Kind of in return, I am really open and vocal because I'm old enough and experienced enough and nasty enough to be out there and to do that without, I think, an obvious diminishing of any respect for me and what I've accomplished. I'm quite sure there are people out there who go, well, I'm not going to give her a job because of that ADHD thing. But I think the value and the experience that I can put out there outweighs that. Now, as an example of a female chief exec with a seriously disabling neurodiversity.
Yeah, I mean, for autistic people, we usually have a lot of co-occurring conditions. So, I think 30% intellectual disability. 60 to 70% have ADHD, and I've got the double whammy, so I've got the autism and the ADHD.
Just such a mix. Oh my Lord.
No, it's like having these 2 completely different personalities inside your head trying to take you in. Focus. No, don't focus. It's like crazy. But I must own up to being heavily medicated for my ADHD. So I take Ritalin for the ADHD sort of stuff. So I'm only really coping with the autism. In Australia, we have assistance. We have an NDIS scheme, a National Disability Insurance Scheme. So I am level 2, so I'm quite autistic. And so I do get support, but the support isn't encouraged around work. The support is encouraged around helping you with cooking, helping you with cleaning, having coffees with you, like sort of stuff. It would be just wonderful to own up to say, hey, I'd actually like someone to help me with work, would be a great thing. So I think that's something that there's a few people that are kind of like advocating for over here. I'm lucky that one of my support workers is engaged in computing. So, he comes in as my social support, but we're stuck into the computer, sort of stuff. So, it's workaround rather than something that's encouraged for it to be support for work, which is very, 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 very disappointing. I'm very lucky that with Wicked Lab, I have an amazing co-founder. And we're a screen together because she is also neurodivergent. She's dyslexic. So we laugh, so the fact is I've got to go I do the scan over the written material, and she handles the people stuff, and she's really good. Like she knows I can only do one thing at a time. Like don't give me all this different stuff. You know what I mean? I'm doing this. This is what I'm working on, sort of thing. So I'm very lucky with regards to how I'm kind of like handling it in my work these days. I think probably one of my biggest issue, and I feel awful about it because I am in my 60s, and that's that's kind of like something that's at the back of my mind because the life expectancy for autistic people is 56, sort of stuff. So I am in my 60s, and I get asked to mentor people all the time. I probably get a couple of emails a day, and I've only got this much people energy in my week. And it's like, and it was really hard to say no to people. But now I'm starting to say, very sorry, but I'm autistic and I've only got so many people hours a week, sort of stuff. So I'm getting better at doing that. So I'd say that was my hardest thing, is having to say no.
Yeah, boundaries like that are really difficult. And I've ended up in a situation at work where I'm being overly empathetic with somebody that I can absolutely see has got undiagnosed ADHD, and actually I'm not doing either of us a favour, and I need to be a bit more neurotypical about it and be firm in the way that situation. But it's really easy to say yes and not say no, and I'm very much coming to the same realization of I absolutely need to do more of that in a number of ways.
Yeah, I think it's because if we're of no use to anyone if we don't.
And we tend to think that we can do everything, and that's a woman thing as well. We've it's really quite hard, particularly at our age, I think, to start going, well, actually, no, I can't, and it's not a moral failing that I can't either. It's no. Walk away.
And it was really interesting when I got diagnosed, which has made me quite passionate about autistic social entrepreneurship. Is that they turned, because I was, there's like level 1 support needs, level 2 significant support needs, level 3, and I came through at level 2. I was quite surprised, and they said, the reason why you've succeeded so well at level 2 is because you've managed your work environment. So it's not very often I leave the house. I work from home. People I knew were cracking jokes during COVID because they were saying to me, "Do you notice any difference, Sharon?" Because it wasn't going much anyway, because that's how I don't have that outside impact on me, and so I function. I have no stress, no anxiety. I have everything I love around me, and so I function really, really well. And for someone who's like 63 this year, I've only worked in the workplace for 10 years of my life. But looking at going back to school, I stopped attending regularly by the end of primary. My parents were asked to sign me out at 14, and I used to have a desk outside the principal's office, and I wasn't allowed to mix with the rest of the kids, sort of stuff. So it was from a really early age that there was this disruption, and I was on welfare for 16 years, and then I started working. But it was two-year contracts, and then it just didn't work, and then for all the rest of the time I've been self-employed, and I've been able to manage my work environment, and I see that as an amazing opportunity for autistic people.
Very common pattern over here as well. And about in our entrepreneurial population, about 40% of the people will be neurodiverse in some way, which is a lot higher than within the standard population, and interestingly equivalent to the levels that you see in the prison population.
Yeah, which is a whole other issue we could talk about too. Yeah, When I think about kind of like the and then you think about the domestic violence, for women, like what percentage? Because you haven't got those, you don't see someone, you can't imagine people doing things that are not nice, sort of thing. So very, very naive and very easy to take advantage of.
Immensely so. And of course, we're not always good at self-employment either, particularly with ADHD, because tax returns, oh man, that's boring and detailed, and we're not good at that for a start. Plus the whole timeline thing of building a pipeline in the future. So when I ran my own business, I found that incredibly difficult. I'm in the moment. Yeah.
So, can I say with the tax return, I can't do that. You've got to, put your receipts in every week. So like 2 days before the tax due, that's it. That's what I'm doing. I'm doing the whole lot. But the whole accounting happens the 2 days before it's due, because I can't keep switching my thought process. It would take me an hour or 2 hours to get my head into putting a receipt in, and then an hour or two to come out of that thought process to work on something else. So there's no way I'm going to do that every week, So it's like this block at the end.
It's a real challenge for neurodiverse entrepreneurs that they often don't realise until the first point at which it trips them up. And then, of course, everybody will be saying, oh, yeah, bloody taxes. We all leave them to the last minute. But it's always, in the case of neurodiversity, it's the case of the order of magnitude. So when we say that, oh, my God, this is taking all my energy, literally, we're wiped out, and we have been procrastinating or being inertiated about this for months and months. And it's a low level tick of kind of know we should be doing that, but can't do it. And then we just, there you go. I hope you guys are finding this helpful. I mean,
it's really interesting.
It's great.
It'd be obviously feeding off each other with your stories there. It's really great. So it's lovely just hearing you chat. I wondered if anybody else had any questions or thoughts to add to the picture. No, they're just happy to hear you guys chatting amongst yourselves and talking about your experiences. Yeah, I mean, I was fascinated to hear that thing about entrepreneurs, actually, Cathy, because it did make me, where they talk about starter finishers and the ability to sort of flip from one thing to another and not follow up. There must be a huge population, and it would be really interesting to know about social entrepreneurs as well, because obviously women make up more of the leadership population than general entrepreneurs, and how many women do actually, maybe they're not even aware, because you were talking about some of those characteristics there. I was like, oh, actually, that I can identify with. I never get my tax return done.
Here in the UK, we've got this huge cohort of women at about my age, mid-50s, who are currently getting diagnosed, because of this huge increase in awareness, and because obviously we've been missed at school, because female ADHD presents quite differently, and we generally don't have the physical hyperactivity, which is the thing that everybody thinks of. We sometimes now get diagnosed when our kids are diagnosed. So we've got a kind of mid-20s, 30s point. But then there's a load of us that are being massively impacted by menopause, because the drop in estrogen just makes all of the ADHD symptoms go, whoa, which is what happened to me, effectively. And so we have currently got this huge amount of us going through this experience and luckily talking about it, which I think is really helpful. But it genuinely is, if you're thinking to yourself, oh yes, some of this is really ringing bells, what you need to ask yourself is this literally all the time, not just occasionally? And have I always been like this? I've just been hiding it. So I'm, you know, I can go right back to my school days, and I can talk to you about my revision timetables, which I would religiously make, and they're color coded, really, really beautiful. I'd enjoy making the plan. Do not have to accommodate all the stuff I hadn't revised because I'd procrastinated about it.
Yeah.
Massive big tick. Yes, has always had ADHD.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think for older women, because I'm late diagnosed as well, and but I think, you know, back in my day, it wasn't autism; it was classified as childhood schizophrenia, and the reason for it was mothers. So they blamed mothers for it, and it was called refrigerator mother syndrome. So if you had a child that was autistic, it was that your mother never gave you enough love, was the reason behind it. So, you know, like who would want to take their kid forward on that, you know, premise sort of thing, as that being the reason sort of thing. And it was really the start of the advocacy. What did come from mothers who kind of like got together and said, you know, this is bullshit, you know, sort of stuff. Like, how could they say this? Was really the start of really the advocacy with regards to autism. But also, I don't know what it's like in the UK, but over here, it's not cheap to get it diagnosed. You know, you're paying a few $1,000s to get a diagnosis. And someone said to me, because I come from a fairly povo background, and they said to me, and the community that I come from, someone said to me, do you think that there's more cases of autism there than there is, you know, in the general state sort of thing? And I said, on paper, no, because who can afford to get the diagnosis if you haven't got money, you know? So,
I mean, it's a building into quite a scandal over here in terms of the NHS, because they will do, if you can convince your GP to refer you, they will do an assessment and medication, but waiting times are anywhere between 18 months and 3 years. I was fortunate. I could go, no, I need to know now, which again is very ADHD. And I paid. I went privately, and the assessment itself and the 6 months of titration of the medication before they would hand me back to the NHS to prescribe it cost me the best part of £2,500. Affordable for many people, and in fact cost us double, because I immediately realized that we needed to do my son as well, which we did. But
It looks like Rachel might have a question. Do you have a question, Rach?
Yeah, I just find it really interesting, but obviously it can be a delicate subject to approach if you suspect someone close to you might have it. And I guess my question is, from your experience of self-diagnosing, do you think that there is a way to approach that person, or have you got to leave them to figure it out themselves?
I think it really depends on what context your relationship is. And if you know them well enough to know that you can have a conversation and just say, I've been reading some stuff, I've noticed some of this stuff, can I point you at a couple of websites or a book or whatever it is, that, you know, but that's not easy to do. Generally, what I've found is that by being so open about my experience, people will come to me and go, oh, that really sounds like me or my sister or my son or whatever it is. Can you point me at some resources? And I've just got a list of things that I've found particularly helpful. I've only ever done it once, where I've proactively said to somebody, I think you need to consider X. And in hindsight, that was a situation that could have gone horribly wrong, and I was quite fortunate that in fact it didn't, and I was right, and that person has dealt with it, accommodated it, and everything else. But it's quite a risky strategy. So really, it's the can you if there's somebody that you're thinking of specifically, you could start the conversation with, brilliant webinar today with people talking about this, and this, and it really made me think of you. And you know, whether you go down that route.
I think yeah, context is everything, isn't it? And I think that's why it's so important that we're raising awareness of it, because then obviously there's more opportunity for people.
I genuinely had no idea at all. And I was following a lovely friend who'd gone through a double diagnosis like Sharon. And so she was posting about this journey on Facebook. And I don't tend to watch videos at all. It's not a thing that I do. And I accidentally clicked on a video that she posted. And I watched it. And it was honestly like a million light bulbs going off in my head of, oh my God, this is me. And then I went down an ADHD rabbit hole, obviously, and read 7 books in a weekend.
I would say for me personally, I haven't got the tact because of the autism to be able to go in gently, you know. So I would probably be the worst person in the world to take someone on a gentle journey of, you know, you have autism. It would come out very blunt, you know, because the thing is I am so direct, and that is an autistic characteristic. I think there is some amazing, like in Australia there is, and I would say there's probably the same in the UK, some amazing autistic and ADHD leaders who are able to, you know, they're just a pleasure to listen to. And I mean, we've got some in Australia, you know, I mean, even the young girl who the climate change, I've forgotten what her name is now, she's autistic. There's so many famous people and great women that are standing up now. And I think to listen to them, you know, sit down, listen to a few YouTubes of them, sort of thing, with regards to these amazing women. And you'll soon get the gist that you're on the same wavelength as they are.
That's really great to hear that. And yeah, I mean, it's always an issue, isn't it, thinking how do I handle that, and, you know, do I have to be tactful or whatever, or not, as the case may be. My husband's a scientist, so I see it all the time. It's just part and parcel of life, really, often in the sciences, I think. And yeah, Greta Thunberg is a really, really good case. I'm really flickering badly now, so I'm going to switch my video off.
So with the you know, because I am very direct, and it doesn't always go down well. So, you know, I'll have conversations with my co-founder in the business, and she'll take care of anything which needs tact. Anything that needs a direct conversation, I'm your girl, because it's just how it is. So it's a case of, just knowing what you're better at doing.
Yeah, it's probably quite refreshing as well, because I mean, in the particularly the English culture, we are so indirect, and other cultures are perhaps a bit better at being direct. So you're probably quite refreshing, you know, Sharon, being able to say things like they are. So that's a plus, probably. So yeah, I mean, it's been a really great session just to hear you guys bouncing off each other, and thanks for being so open about it. You know, I've certainly learned a lot just listening to the two of you, and now, you know, a bit more awareness, especially about, you know, the dual diagnosis that you were talking about, Sharon, having both. My God, that must be quite a challenge for you. But yeah, I mean, that's really, really interesting, and I'm going to look out for it now. Well, in myself and around, you know, around and about in the social enterprise world. And I was at the Women's Leadership, Wise Women Leadership 100 this week, and you can see that, you know, that sort of articulation. And women that are just very excited about what they're doing, and you know, flitting from, you know, setting up one social enterprise to another. So I do wonder. if we've got a sort of a huge undiagnosed cohort of women social entrepreneurs out there, and all the better for it, really, because we all make better decisions being a diverse population, I think, and embracing diversity. And that's really what it's all about, isn't it? It's about understanding that different people have different things that make them tick, and then they bring a different perspective to a picture. So thank you ever so much for your time this morning, both of you. Really lovely session. Shame we didn't have more people, but as I say, we will be hopefully putting this on YouTube, as long as you're okay with that. And you know, I suspect there'll be lots of other people that will listen into it, because there was quite a lot of interest in it. It's probably just the time slot. So really good. And
if I send that, I've got just a little aid memoir of links that I send to people when they say,
yeah,
of like further reading and stuff.
Yeah, that sort of further reading, anything like that, yeah, just wing it over our way, and we'll send it out. We could even put, you know, a link to it in our newsletter, because we can talk a bit about this session. So I'm sure it will be of interest to quite a lot of people. So thanks very much, and I hope nobody gets snowed in. And I know that Sharon would actually be quite happy if she was in snow to be snowed in, because she wouldn't want to come out of her house. It's like, hooray! enforced lockdown again. But yeah, lovely morning, and so nice to see everybody who managed to make it, and good luck with the rest of your day.
Yeah, I'm off to have a wine. Because it is evening here in Australia, just putting that in there, like it's not morning.
Yeah.
Thank you. Bye.
Yeah, see you then. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
See you. Bye.